So you have completely botched your intuition. Maybe it worked in the past, but then over time, something changed, it's not really working anymore. Or maybe it never worked at all to begin with, and you hear all these amazing things about intuition, how effective it can be, and how it can make you feel like you're Nostradamus. So today's video, we're gonna talk about how does intuition work? Why is yours always wrong? Why is this happening to you? And then, of course, for the final grand finale, how do we change this? So how does intuition work? Now, it's a discussed topic. It's not, no one really has 100% accurate interpretation of it. But here's what I've gathered so far from coaching many individuals and doing my own personal studies in psychology. The first thing we have to understand is the difference between intuition and sensation, because they are different and often people mix them up. And it's very important to split them. Intuition is a future tense experience. It is something you are anticipating that might happen. Within that, it contains signs and symbols. You can only process so much with things that are going around you. Your brain has to filter out the things you're familiar with, you're used to, like, you know, the shape of your house, your furniture, all these things. You can't always just be processing them, so they go in the background. And eventually, over time, you get reduced to more simple, clear signals. And what happens with intuition is it collects all the data that you ever see, all the data that you've acquired through years of work and trauma and pain and all these things, and eventually delivers you an experience. You will have a physical experience that tells you, I shouldn't go out to work tomorrow. For whatever reason, something's telling you you're getting a bad feeling about it. Or I'm gonna actually hand in my opinion about the direction of the company, even though it could risk me getting fired, but I feel it's gonna work. There's something in me telling me it's gonna pay off. Now, contrasting that with sensation, that is a present tense experience. In other words, it's in the physical moment. You could be hanging out with somebody. You just met them. You're hanging out with them, and there's something about the person that you just feel off about. It's again, a physical experience that's telling you, I don't feel right about this guy. There's something about the way he's speaking. I don't trust him. So it is something that is happening in the moment, and you're getting data that's telling you and giving you some sense of judgment. And to give you a visual about the difference between your conscious awareness and your unconscious is the iceberg analogy. It's a nice one. I mean, we all have seen it. But the idea is right above the surface of that water is everything that you are consciously aware of. The thoughts you have, the images you see in your mind, and then everything below the surface is the unconscious. It is absolutely massive. That is what contains all your pains, all your what's called the golden shadow, the potential of who you can be. It contains your fears, things you avoid, absolutely everything. We cannot process all of it, so it just gets pushed into the background. And before I go into the next thing as to why this is happening to you, I have to leave this section with just one sentence. Intuition predicts the future using data from your past. And this is going to be the moment that you're going to really see the difference and really actually get more clarity as to why things have been going so wrong. In order for us to understand this part, I'm going to give an analogy with a compass. Looks pretty good. I mean, I didn't get any designs on the inside, and I put a little hook there as like an idea of a necklace or something. But first we have to break down the steps towards how intuition can play out. It first is determined by your past, your upbringing, the traumas you've had, the experiences, and ideally between the age of 5 up to 15, 16, 17 years old, or as early as you can remember. Your relationship with your family, your relationship with your community, the first job you had, everything that has ever happened to you. That phase goes into a memory. These memories can shape into complexes, emotional knots that have caused disturbances in your life. It is also seeped into the unconscious realm because you can't contain everything. And like we said earlier, sometimes often if we have painful memories, difficult ones, ones that you don't really want to think about all the time. You're going to push that into the background, sinking into the unconscious. Then we move into the next step. This then eventually forms your beliefs, both personal and external in the outer world. Why is that? Because if, let's say, you had an experience from your past that made you feel that you always had to prove yourself, that everything had to be perfect in order for you to be worthy of attention and acceptance, that then would lead into a perfectionist complex, where now everything has to be perfect before you actually submit it or before you do anything in your life. But really, truly, it is a form of fear. It is a sabotage you do to yourself. Now, if we move that to the next step, this forms a belief. What is the belief? If I am not perfect, then I'm unworthy. If I'm imperfect, then no one will accept me into their inner circle. I'll never have a loving relationship, or I will never actually fulfill my ambitions for my career. Now, this will shape the internal, but what's really important is that it shapes the external. Oftentimes with the clients I work with who, let's say, for example, deal with perfectionism, I deal with all forms of self-sabotage, but perfectionism being the ones where they say, I always find that everything I'm working on is never exactly good enough. Every time I'm feeling just about close, I find something within it that I need to change again. And if I change too many things, now it doesn't look remotely close to what I started with, so on and so forth. Eventually, they just completely abandon the project altogether, or they're stuck in the limbo of constantly tweaking it. But in reality, below the surface, it is that deep story. It's the deep narrative that is influencing their decisions. It is influencing the way they see things and experience things. But where the intuition comes into play is it becomes the filter. Like we said earlier, there's just too much going on. So your brain has to filter things. It also will act to protect you. These traumatic experiences, anytime someone gets activated or triggered, it is a feeling of unsafe. Something is not safe. I am under threat of either my identity, my literal safety, my ego. Something is jeopardizing it. So what does your brain have to do? It needs to protect you. I mean, that's the goal, right? So as it tries to protect you, what does it do? It filters things. And what I mean by that is, if perfectionism is your issue and you're working on something, what is your intuition going to tell you about the upcoming project or presentation you're going to be giving? It is going to tell you, I don't feel right about this. Something doesn't feel right. Maybe you notice the way that your peers have been working on their project. It looks a little bit better. Maybe they're farther ahead. And you just never really fully looked at it, but just with peripheral, you noticed. And there were other things you noticed that eventually accumulated into data. And it tells you, oh no, if I do this presentation the way it is now, it's never going to work. And so that intuition, that false intuition, causes you then to panic and change things. And all of a sudden, it is worse than what you even started with. In fact, if you had just handed in, maybe even half done, would have been better than what you've done, which is let it go past the deadline. Now you're going to feel bad about yourself. You're going to feel embarrassed. You're going to feel shame, so on and so forth. And to give you a visual of what I mean, if you have a compass, right? Let's imagine the compass is your intuition. You're in the middle of the woods. You got to orient your way out. And you look at it, you're supposed to head north. What would happen if you had a magnet in your pocket, let's say? Excuse me. If you had a magnet in your pocket, that freaking compass, buddy, it's going to be whipping around left, right, and center. You're going to be like this, and you're not going to know where to go. And so what does that mean? The magnet is the sabotaging loop. It is the pattern disguised as some form of standard, something that you have to abide by. But really, it's a form of protection from a much deeper fear. And unless you can find the magnet, understand how it works, you're looking at it and you're going, why is it like, I don't understand what's going on. You have no idea where to even begin. Now, how do we change it? The first thing we have to do, this is the most important thing. And by the way, I hope you enjoy my flashlight. I must have drawn this a couple times because every time I drew it, it looked like the wrong thing. I'll just put it that way. So here's the flashlight. You have to point your flashlight. What is your flashlight? Quite literally, your conscious awareness. I like to think of what you look at as a flashlight. Whatever you point at casts light towards it. Light reveals the truth, albeit very painful, but absolutely necessary. Because the alternative is that you just keep pointing it away from the truth, aiming it at darkness, and never actually doing anything to resolve these limitations that are self-imposed. And that's really important to understand. These are self-imposed limitations that we have with perfectionism, with the fear of failure, with the fear of success, the fear of intimacy, all these things that are sabotaging our life. Of course, throughout your history, you've had to adapt to them. And you've had to survive, is what I'm trying to say. So you made coping mechanisms. That's not your fault. But as you start to get older, as time goes by, and you notice and recognize them, you're intellectually aware of these limitations, and you choose to stay where you are, then that is self-imposed. When you can truly be much bigger. And I don't mean that financial, I just mean in living existence, in feeling, and knowing you're not holding anything back. So the first thing is you have to challenge the story. What is the story that is holding you back right now? What are you afraid of if people saw? The next thing is find out what's really going on. Because once you find the story, you need to understand what is beneath the surface. You are saying it's because of standards, or it's because, let's say, in fear of rejection. Oh, this person is just annoying, or they don't mesh with my values. You're saying all these things, but if it's a consistent, repeated thing over and over and over, not a one-off event, what are you really hiding from? What's the veil? What's behind the veil? So once you take the veil off, what is it? Because you have to also know you are bigger than this. You are. The only reason why it feels difficult is because over time, this pattern, this sabotaging loop has grown a much bigger muscle. And so, of course, it feels way larger than you. But the way you shrink it is by you point your flashlight, point it at your past, point it at your traumas, point it at your memories, not to get stuck there. Just like you don't want to just sit there and ruminate on your past forever and all the good days and all these things. No, but you absolutely need to see where things have gone wrong. How did you adapt to them? And is it something you absolutely need to keep holding on to? And this is the most important thing, because we hold on to things that often aren't even ours. And what do I mean by that? I'll give you a personal example. So my father worked incredibly hard, consistent, disciplined. He had an insane work ethic. At the peak of his business career, he was working 7 days a week nonstop. However, he had a very anxious, stressed state, permanent state. And he had a relationship with God that gave the impression to me, it was direct and indirect in his language, that if you become too cocky, if you become too proud of what you're doing, that is hubris, and God or the universe will smite and humble you. What that has done for me, I've carried that my whole life and realized that why have I always gone out to compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and felt this insane physical pressure that I want to leave, or that I'm not good enough to do this, even though I've practiced for hours and hours and hours? Why do I all of a sudden, even though psychologically no, I'm prepared, but physically I'm locked? It's like this wall, this invisible wall that I can't get through. Because we carry ghosts. We carry the ghost of our family, we carry the ghost of our society, and we bring them along with us, and we have no idea that it's theirs. We don't know. Because, like we said with the unconscious, you can't carry all these things. So you dump them into the unconscious realm. You consciously forget, but your body does not forget. That's why, you know how many times I get clients that will tell me, I know what's going on, but my body is not understanding. It still feels it's in threat. Well, because with a long enough time horizon, with a repeated loop, yeah, you can even consciously be aware of it, but your body's deadlocked. So you have to have a process, which is what I teach all my clients, as to how to unlock that. Because once you can unlock it and you're completely in alignment from your mind to your heart to your soul, then you absolutely laugh at how silly it has been. But at the same time, you can give yourself some grace and some mercy, not labeling yourself an idiot or anything like that. But I've gone through that process too. Now, if you want to know more about yourself and the ways you've been limiting your potential, what stories have been holding you back, what traumas you want to let go of, not just psychologically, but physically, go ahead and download my free guide below, absolutely for free. It goes over the basics of my Rule of 3 method to unlock, get yourself to move out of your own way, and finally follow through. And of course, I offer, I offer free guidance session. Now they're limited space. I think I only have 2 or 1 more spots available. So if you want to work with me directly and personally in exchange that we put it online and we share your story and inspire other people, you can do that as well. And then for those that have been watching me for quite some time, if you're on my newsletter and you've been taking in my content for some time and you're finally saying, you know what, I'm absolutely done. I want to change. I want to finally follow through in what I'm doing, build my business, go into the career I've always wanted to go to, ask out the girl I've always been wanting to ask out, but I never felt the courage that I can. If you're tired of it and you want to finally become who you're meant to be, you can go ahead and sign up to my private mentorship. We'll do a consultation first, 45 minutes, get to know each other, because to be honest with you, none of this will work if we don't jive. Like, we have to click. That's really honestly fundamentally the biggest thing. If we click, the method that I have will work so smoothly, and you'll be amazed at the transformations. You can read them on my page and all the reviews that I have.